Win big in 2025 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got paid contests coming to a state near you, giving out boosts and bonuses, slashing lines all day long. Check it out. Hop in those player prop DFS contests. It's a real fun platform over there. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grow bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. And folks, we got UFC fight night going on in Vancouver this upcoming week. The last week of Contender Series for quite some time. Octagon, PFL, KSW. For my picks on all that stuff and more, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. Let's talk about what you're doing DFS-wise and betting-wise for UFC Vancouver. And look out for my MMA DFS Value Picks article that comes out Friday mornings through RotoBaller. And with me tonight, this is at least, I think this is going to be appearance number 4 if you count the Secret Lost Tapes episode that we did about a
I
year.
forgot about that.
He's been on this podcast multiple times. He is the operations coordinator for Hawkeye. That's the underscore for Hawkeye Innovations. You've seen him before on the Field of 68, former voice on ESPN 680, 939 The Ville, and IU Sports Media. Give it up for Jack Grossman. Jack, how you doing tonight? So glad to have you back.
Man, I am fantastic. More than happy to be back on the pod. Brady, how you been, man?
Oh, I've been good. Now, this college football season, not as good as I'm sure it's been for you.
I'm about to say, this has been maybe the most fun I've ever had following college football. So it's been a different experience. I'm not used to this still.
To juxtapose the situations that we find ourselves in, right now, Kentucky looking at the final year potentially of the Mark Stoops tenure.
You think they're gonna move on?
Here's the thing, Jack. We're seeing all these other teams pay these buyouts. No matter what, even if it's Penn State, who just agreed to pay $50 million to James Franklin not to coach anymore today, we're seeing people make the buyouts. And that's the important thing. We're seeing people move on. And I think it would be really tough of this institution to ask people to do another year under Mark Stoops. And again, same thing that I said about Calipari near the end. I'm not going to sit here and say that this guy's a bad coach, that he's a bad this, a bad that. We've always known what their flaws and their strengths are. The fact is, man, sometimes you just run your course at a place and a change of scenery is needed on both accounts. That's what the case was for Calipari, and it's what the case is going to be for Mark Stoops. We've had some amazing years under Mark Stoops, but the time has just run up on how long you can be there. And the SEC has changed. College sports, college football has changed an immense amount since that tenure started. And we just need to enter this realm with someone new, because to circle it back around to you and your fandom, man, Indiana is knocking on the door of 2 straight years making the college football playoff. Indiana and Kurt
Can you believe you just said that sentence?
Um,
Because I don't. And yeah, but it's completely true.
It's crept up on everybody, but if Indiana can be successful, Kentucky fans have to sit here and wonder, what could we have done to have been in Indiana's position at this point?
Brady, it's funny you say that, because when I was back in college, I did a radio show at WIUX, the student radio station. I had a big take during the 2018 football season of, if only Indiana could be more like Kentucky football. So it's funny how the roles have reversed here, because that was, as you know, Kentucky fans said that was one of the 10 win seasons under Mark Stoops. But for Indiana to be in the spot where they're at now, I never in my life thought I would see the day where they would go on the road against a top five team. And I'm not even talking about winning the game. Just look like they belong on the field.
Not,
That was a bigger shock to me than, I mean, obviously them winning the game is stunning, but to go out there and just look like you belong on the field physically, athletically, schematically, that's something that you have never been able to say about Indiana football. And that's a credit to Signetti, the staff, and the players they brought in, because it's disbelief that they won 11-2 last year and got better. I mean, this is the program that has the most losses in college football history. They had never won more than 9 games before last season. They had never beaten a top 5 team on the road before Saturday. They had only one top 5 win period, and that was back in 1967. This
and,
doesn't happen at Indiana football.
and Jack, not only is Kentucky sitting here saying, God, what could we have done to be more like Indiana right now? You know who else is saying it? Penn State is sitting
Yeah.
saying it right now, saying, what could we have done to be more like Indiana right now? Penn State is watching their spot. Historically, who cares now? The last 90 years of college football doesn't matter anymore. You just dropped 2 straight games as 20 or more point favorites. And now you got to start from scratch in the middle of a season.
Yeah, I mean, they look completely toast. But, you said it with Stoops, though. We've seen it both nationally and locally. That $50 million, you could say, well, you got to pay the players now. You got to buy out the new coach you bring in. You get all this money. How can you pay $50 million to let a guy go? We've seen it over and over again with James Franklin. Locally, we've seen it with Calipari, Kenny Payne, Bobby Petrino, Scott Satterfield, Indiana, Archie Miller, Tom Allen, Mike Woodson. We've seen this a lot the last few years, but locally and nationally, Jimbo Fisher on a national scale. The money only matters until it doesn't. So if you're looking at like Kentucky football, if I'm not saying that you have, because it's more of a basketball school. Sorry, Mark Stoops. Calipari won that round. He did. But if you want to be serious about football, you have to find the money. And more often than not, teams do find the money. So the Penn State situation's stunning. I mean, to go from being ranked third in the country, hosting Oregon on College game day in the whiteout, Nick Saban dressed up as a Nittany Lion, to firing your coach 3 weeks later. That doesn't happen. Like that is as jaw-dropping, knee-jerk reaction type thing that you could have. He said Mark Stoops might run his course much quicker, and you hit the accelerator a lot there, but it looks like James Franklin might have run his course in Happy Valley as well.
I mean, the thing is, it seems crazy a lot of the time, and these firings used to seem crazy. Like Florida wanting to move on from Dan Mullen at a certain point seemed crazy, and Texas wanting to move on from Tom Herman at a certain point seemed crazy. But the thing is, in 2025, these are decisions that maybe you're probably losing millions of dollars. You might be losing millions of dollars per week for every week that you don't make this decision in the long term. These are decisions that at some point you're being forced to make. There just is no moving forward for Penn State with James Franklin. Imagine what would happen next week if James Franklin was still the head coach at Penn State and you're preparing for another game. I mean, these are.
Do you know who's on their schedule coming up too, right?
Which one is it coming up?
They're at Iowa, at Ohio State, and then IU at home is their next 3 games.
And you'd be.
You're probably staring losing 6 in a row. Which again, what's going back to the initial point, the fact that I'm just kind of sitting there like, yeah, Indiana's going to go into Penn State and win. You want to know when the last time that happened, Brady? Take a guess. It doesn't matter what you say, it's wrong because it's never happened.
I'm gonna say 1976. Like I was gonna go for something that seemed crazy.
Yep.
And it'd be one thing too, like you come in and Iowa's coming on the road into Happy Valley. You do not want to be licking your wounds as any team going into Iowa. That's not a place that anybody wants to go on, not feeling right in the locker room and confident in your team, because Iowa will pull out a 10-3 win off the back of special teams and their secondary, like in that game. So you do not want to be feeling bad about yourself going into an away game at Iowa.
And then you go to Columbus.
And that's your easiest game in a 3-game stretch. Oh my God. I can't imagine the nightmare of being a Penn State fan this year. It all just comes crashing down because this kid that extorted Tennessee for $2 million decided to play hard one week. After he said, he was like, I'm going to take a mental health break. Like, look, my run at UCLA has been real bad. Our coach got fired. We started off 0 and 4. And as 20-point underdogs, Nico just runs a hole through them and changes the trajectory of college football for the next few years. Look at the job openings there are going to be in this next coaching cycle.
I mean, that's part of the issue for Kentucky. I mean, if you open the job now, I mean, Penn State's open, UCLA's already open, Florida might be open. There's going to be a lot of really good jobs that could be open. That's tough for Kentucky to be going into this year with it. But maybe Penn State's open for a little bit of, because UCLA was left for dead, 0 and 4. And they get off the mat, they beat Penn State, and they blitzed Michigan State this past weekend too. Maybe you're hoping for like that little bit of Ed Orgeron type of spark because even without Drew Aller, there's a lot of talent on that roster, especially defensively. So maybe you get like a win-win for the Gipper type of deal against Iowa, and then if you win one game, you never know what can happen. Not that they're going to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State because that's not going to happen. But
And the thing is, this is it's a double-sided be careful what you wish for if you're those two West Coast teams and the rest of the Big Ten. Is, if you're the powers of the Big Ten, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, teams that we're used to contending for playoff spots, and now on a week that normally you're just traveling to Pennsylvania, Michigan, maybe at work you're traveling to New Jersey. Now you're going on the West Coast time zone and you're playing at the Rose Bowl at 9 in the morning typically. Hey, hey,
I don't, for football, I don't feel bad for them.
no, I
It's
don't feel
you do it once, maybe twice a season. And again, I'm the guy who's alma mater just went to Eugene and did the cross country trip and won. So maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask that. But one, it's not like you're doing this routinely, like you are in other sports. And two, the reason they're doing it is because of the football money.
well.
That's why that's there. So I'm not gonna sit there and say, oh, Penn State has to go to L.A. for a game and go out there. That's I don't care. UCLA was 0 and 4.
Now, I don't feel bad for anybody, but what they're going to find out is when you've just played an away game and now your back-to-back away is going to be in Los Angeles. And look at the last few times Michigan State's gone out to UCLA. It has not ended well. And those are games that they probably should have won, at least, the way it was handicapped at the time. So whenever a team on the East Coast has to go at West Coast, they statistically perform much worse. So it depends where it gets thrown in too.
But
If
how much is that just because it's a road game and road games in college football are difficult?
I think, well, when you're talking UCLA, I think it matters a lot more because they've got like 8 students that are at those games. Like it's not a strong fan.
I mean, you've also seen that, like in basketball, for instance. You've seen, I mean, obviously Auburn's rocking these days, but back in the day, you go in there, or Alabama as well, another good example of a program that's really, really good now, but always was. You go to Coleman Coliseum 10, 12 years ago, and it's almost like a sleepy environment. That can lull you to sleep. Big Ten teams have dealt with that for years with Penn State, where you joked about eight fans in UCLA. There's legitimately 8 fans at Penn State basketball games. They had the little mic that's there where you can hear the individual students chanting and going, oh, and I was like, this is just it can lull you to sleep playing in that environment.
That's the thing about like Kentucky road games in the SEC is I remember playing at Auburn when Auburn was less than a 500 team every single year.
The
And
Tony Barbie era.
we were taking those environments over, like Kentucky, we'd have the blue white chant going in the first half, like up whatever. And those were not even the best years for Kentucky. And now every SEC road game is a legit road game. Basketball catches up, but at the same time, Kentucky also has to watch Vanderbilt steal the national spotlight this year in football. And it's not something that was unattainable. Diego Pavia was something very attainable. He's always been attainable from his time after New Mexico Military Institute, then to New Mexico State. That was just that was just somebody seeing something that a lot of other people didn't. Is that guy has, I mean, cachet above all else. You pee on the other team's field and you film it and you get in trouble for it. That is a different kind of personality. But watching Vanderbilt be successful and watching that turn into a game that used to be an auto win for Kentucky.
Yeah,
Even
that
in
was the get well game.
Yeah, even in 5 and 7, 6 and 6 years, we were looking at Vandy like, unless something goes horribly wrong, that we should not lose this game. Now, after the South Carolina game for Kentucky this year, I eyeballed the rest of the schedule and I'm like, this is a 3-9 team. Like, I don't know.
I've been there before. It's I will say this, at least if you're Kentucky or you're Louisville or you're Indiana, not that Indiana's been good at basketball, but at least you could sit there and say, well, basketball season's coming. Penn State's got nothing, man. What are they looking forward to? Wrestling,
And
hockey.
wrestling, like I know they're diving and
Like,
up to par. I hate to, like I know I don't. I guess it like I feel nothing about Penn State. Like I'm not a Big Ten guy. It's not something that I have this hatred for Penn State for. And
so you know Texas A&M fans are like a cult.
yeah, all right, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, Penn State's the Big Ten version of that.
Okay, I
Yeah,
see. All right, then it's fun to root on that downfall. That's
yeah.
all. Um, Now, and at the same time, like I'm as Kentucky looking forward to the Louisville game at the end of the year, and that was always no matter really a lot of give or take. Most of the time, that's a 50-50 game. This year, the coaching difference in what Jeff Brom has brought to Louisville is a significant difference, visibly, and where Mark Stoops, what he has left in the gas tank. And, Louisville and Jeff Brom, great eye for, quarterback talent and any of those pieces out of the transfer portal. Miller Moss certainly has had like some very like, high ceiling moments this year. Um, and so now, Louisville, I think that they position themselves way better for the next 10 plus years in football. Kentucky has to hope that these next few decisions that they do make are well executed, or else you're looking at a long period of time where things aren't going your way.
But you're always one hire away. I mean, and again, to use Indiana as an example, like Tom Allen did some great things there, but it like Mark Stoops much quicker, a much accelerated version of Mark Stoops very quickly ran its course and was like, okay, it's not 2019, 2020 anymore. It's done. You got to move on. But if you make the right hire, you can be really good really quickly in the transfer portal era, in the NIL era. If you have the financial backing and you have the ability to bring in good players, you're always one hire away from maybe not being college football playoff good. But I mean, like, again, this is Kentucky, this is Indiana. You're not, obviously, you want to be in the college football playoff, but it's still not the end all be all like in Alabama where you're banging on the doors going to fire the guy if he loses 2 games in a row. If you're getting to 6, 7 wins and making bowl games, that's a baseline. And you can do that within a year or two if you make the right hire.
Yeah, and what make the right hire means in 2025 also includes out of the portal. Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing because um, when it comes to the hires that you can make, Will Levis was not a highly, that wasn't like on everybody's top list of transfer portal guys to get or anything. That was just a good eye for a guy that was a backup at Penn State to Sean Clifford, who, had different skill sets that better translated to us. And then we got cocky. We thought we were QBU there for a little bit. We bring in Devin Leary. It doesn't go amazingly. But, it's just a few pieces away. It's just a Ray Davis, a Chris Rodriguez, a Will Levis away from a 10-win season. And the way that we've gone about, building our roster the last, few years has not been ideal. This is also a school where we've had some of our best, most surprising years, at least, where we just had our wide receiver handle the vast majority of snaps on offense and running the wildcat, running the whatever, having Lynn Bowden or Randall Cobb throw for 500 yards or whatever. Like, we're always a school that had to kind of like think outside the box to, make the most of your resources. Now we've had a bunch of resources. We've just like spent that money poorly.
I, I yeah, I agree with that last part. But also, when you look at what made the Mark Stoops era successful at its height and what's making the Kurt Signetti era successful beyond anyone's wildest dreams right now in Bloomington. It's not that they're doing anything gimmicky. It's proving a fact that I really did not think was possible for a long time at either school. That Stoops proved and Signetti has certainly proved of, yeah, it is possible in Bloomington or Lexington to recruit dudes and line up and physically be able to just go line up and play football. Like you don't need to be, doing the Tim Couch air raid before everyone else does. You don't need to be like what you had Kevin Wilson. They were really innovative of let's run a play every 8 seconds type of deal. You don't need to do that. You can just go up and be better than the other team if you have the right personnel and the right coach to do it.
Well, I'm not saying that anything that Stoops ever did was any more gimmicky. I don't think it was any more gimmicky than what any of the service academies do, which is like know your strengths. If your defense is the best part of your entire team and you got some weapons on special teams, and you've got athletes, why not minimize the amount of time that the other team has to put points on the board if that's going to be where you struggle? It's not necessarily gimmicky to say that you're running something different than people in college football today. In fact, I think it's something that people should do more of. Is
Right. I'm not saying Stoops was gimmicky. I'm arguing the opposite. I'm saying we're going to line you up and try to beat you physically on the line of scrimmage, which is something that people did not think was possible to do at Kentucky football before then.
Yeah, and now we've also benefited over the years of having a lot of NFL talent, defensive playmakers, and
Right.
that's
And
part
you
of.
got to recruit and develop those guys or pull them out of the portal these days.
And we just haven't done the best job of that, like over the last few years, and even this year, our backfield has been the thing that's been working the best for us on offense. I think we have two good running backs, but for whatever reason, we've got several people that are not doing what it looks like they should have been doing based on what they did, last year at other comparable schools. Now, again, how much of that is their fault? I really can't tell. This is a team that not doomed for beginning, but the thing is, Zach Calzada, I saw the logic in before the season started. The thing is, there is logic to going and getting a guy that's played 7 years of college football. If you think that, I think we'd be doing a lot better with Max Johnson. I like, as crazy as it is, we haven't necessarily needed a guy to go out and throw for 3,500 yards.
Right. But there needs to be the threat that you can throw the ball.
Yeah, and Calzada, very early it became apparent that that threat was just not going to be there, not against SEC competition. He looked shaky as it was against Toledo. Now, we did do better against MAC competition than I'm used to in this kind of season. Because here's the thing, even if Kentucky goes 9-3, I'm used to a game against Toledo or Eastern Michigan or Miami of Ohio being a squeaker. This time it wasn't. I hate when I get hopeful in these moments. I was so mad when we were only down a touchdown to Georgia this year because it's like, man, I was ready to not care about this game. And now I have to wait until it drives itself into the ground, which is exactly what happened.
Oh man, and Kirby does that too with Stoops every year. They just toy with him.
And
They're we don't need to do anything special. We're just gonna we're just gonna get the game over with. It's not worth our time to put in a real game plan. Is what it's honestly what it feels like when you look at Georgia Kentucky games.
And it'll be one possession. We'll be so close on some of those games. But the worst part is that Kirby Smart was just saying in some interview the other day, oh, the Kentucky fans, they don't appreciate Mark Stoops. They should appreciate that guy more and what he's accomplished. It's like, that's easy for you to say. Dog, you've beaten him every single time. Why would you want Kentucky to move on to a better
No one would have bet on the head.
Jesus Christ, that's so frustrating. Yeah, I can't think of another example out there, but there's got to be an analogous situation where it's like, no, I think Kentucky fans should be very happy with what Mark Stoops has done.
I'll give you the one, which is ironic because Woodson actually beat him a decent amount. That might be the one thing he did consistently well in his 4 years in Bloomington. But Matt Painter lecturing Indiana fans about saying you gotta give Woodson time. He's a great coach. All that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's the last thing Indiana basketball fans want is to get lectured by the Purdue coach. That's definitely the guy that head coach wants in his corner
I,
there.
I hate Matt Painter, dude. I
He's
hate.
a great coach, man.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Hey, there's lots of great coaches that like I wouldn't necessarily want to like have a conversation with in a room. Like I Matt Painter certainly one. Dan Hurley, amazing coach. All right, but like that guy
I
seems
think I think a conversation with Dana Hurley would be fascinating because you have no idea what would happen.
it probably would, but what's the point of me being there? Like, there's no point of having a conversation with the guy necessarily. Like, somebody else asks this guy a question. Let me observe from afar so I don't have to interact with him. You know, like Chris Mack is like a kind of personality that I'll compare it to, where it's like, yeah, I think if someone showed me a video of this guy explaining the box and one, I'd sit there and listen to it. But if you run into that guy at Old Navy and you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like probably not going to be too friendly about it. Like there's the coaches' personalities. Like I there's lots of great coaches, but like Matt Painter has always been somebody that's gotten under my skin for the way that he would talk about like other players like from Purdue who had like gone pro a year early. And he's like, I tried to tell that guy, I tried to tell Carson that like the you got to stick it out one more year. It's like blah 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 blah. Blah. Dude, those are the frustrating people. But like, it's you know, so let's talk a little bit more specifically because we just had Big Blue Madness happen last night. Um, I'm sure you're aware, but like it's an exhausting 365-day effort keeping track of the trash that is being talked between Louisville and Kentucky fans on Twitter. Like it's exhausting and it puts so much pressure on
It's the battle. I mean that is when I was working in radio in Louisville, that was the daily topic is what dumbass BS is going on between those two fan bases every day. It's hilarious. I mean, you never get tired of it. There's always something stupid going on. I say stupid in the most complimentary, hilarious way possible. I mean, there's not that's what makes the Louisville Kentucky rivalry so great is the fact that we have this daily just ongoing war between these two fan bases. And the fact that, now the coaches are got to get into it. I live down in Atlanta now, and it is massively depressing that I didn't know that Pope and Kelsey were going to be recruiting Tay Kenny the day that it opened, because I would have tried to find his house and I could have witnessed the whole spat, man. That would have been incredible. I mean,
they're both like they've had to acknowledge it is the funny
yeah.
like and there's no like, oh no, that didn't happen. They're like, that got a little overblown. Like here's like what happened. And like Pat Kelsey and Mark Pope are such like well-spoken professionals that it's like, yes, Pat Kelsey, and he's like, oh yeah, he was rope-a-doping me.
He's got the reach, but I can get inside.
The big figure, oh no.
Well, so you're the UFC guy. Break down what would happen if those two dudes fought.
The real thing is like that's a different set of weight classes. Like there's no UFC fighters anymore that are 6'10". So it's a hard physicality thing to measure. The issue is I just don't know how Pat Kelsey would be able to comfortably get close. You're gonna want to put Mark Pope on his back. That's gonna be a tough thing to do. But that is what Pat Kelsey would need to do. Like he's not gonna want to stand up battle with Mark Pope. Now, like, and that was so Pat Kelsey will do that whole thing where he'll be like, oh, but love Mark Pope. He's a great husband, a great father, a great coach. Okay. And then Mark Pope will be like, oh, like the thing about it, we're two competitive guys. We're passionate about our jobs. He's passionate about his job. And it's like, what happened in that front lawn, dude? Like,
I know. That's going to be a great tell-all story, 15, 20 years now. That's not the only incident either. In the Louisville, Kentucky basketball game last year, there's that photo where it looks like Pope's got his arm around PK's head. It's like when they're all spatting on the bench. I mean,
the funny, so it's like when Calipari and Patino used to do this, like this. People think because we're both Italian, then we got hits put out on each other.
the difference is you could tell me that they both had hits put on each other, and I would completely believe it.
Yeah, like
I do think at the end of the day, PK and Pope, whatever happened with Tay Kenny, something definitely happened. But
Don't
like they still respect each other. I don't think they hate each other.
yeah.
Petito and Cal,
But,
they hate. I mean, when they played the NCAA tournament game this past year, you can still see it between the two of them. And man, poor Petito, you can see it happen. Just that he was so tight and so wound up. And I'm like, man, we've seen this story so many times when he plays Calipari. He just can't get it out of his head. It's insane.
coaches from the 90s feel a very particular way about John Calipari. Like that's not going away. The Calhouns, the Boeheims, like
Yep.
those feelings about Calipari don't just like go away with time. So that was but they would say that and it was like, man, like I don't care what smiling car salesman stuff you guys have to say to me. I know that you hate each other. But Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey, yeah, I don't think they hate each other at all. I think that it was really just like I think it's like in a pickup game where it's like, yo, like what was that about? Like, I think that that when you're talking about recruiting the number one player and you're both there in the present moment, like yeah, stuff's gonna boil over. I would expect it, and I'm glad I was waiting for the episode with you to say the things that I want to say about Kentucky and Louisville's fan base. Is like, look, there are Kentucky fans out there. There are Louisville fans out there that refuse to say anything good about the other side. And folks, I love you for it. That's what we like to see. I love to see Kentucky fans saying like, when's the last time you guys won a championship? 1986 officially. And I love to see Louisville fans being like, yeah, but what'd you do in the tournament the last decade? Right? Look, that's all great stuff. All right. The fact is, Jack, sitting here with you objectively, Kentucky is one of the greatest, if not the greatest program of all time. Louisville is one of the greatest programs of all time. I have no qualms about saying that, and it's two of the greatest fan bases in all of college basketball. It's what makes this, to me, the greatest rivalry in all of college basketball, even greater than Duke Carolina. Now, obviously, I'm a little biased on that, but like I think that there's a lot of support for it. But folks, like I love that the two exist. I love that they spew illogical hatred towards each other. Like can't even admit that the other one's good at anything.
That's what makes it special. I mean, the Duke Carolina rivalry, it's the country club rivalry. They respect each other. Duke Carolina beats Duke in the Final Four, and Paolo Banchero's yelled, "I hope they win it all for the states." Like, bleep that, man. You think Patino wanted Calipari to win after Kentucky beat him in 2012? Hell no. Do you think that you're gonna see a Duke and a Carolina fan getting into a fight in a dialysis center? Do you think if there's a Duke and North Carolina alumni game with dudes that haven't put the jerseys on for 10 years, that there's going to be a fight break out at the end of the game and a dude's going to be spitting on a player from the other team?
Yeah,
No.
and Jack, I guarantee you, if you're a Duke or you're a Carolina fan, both of your kidneys work, so you're not even at a dialysis center. But it's kind of like explaining to people who don't understand why the Crosstown Shootout is one of the best rivalries in all of college basketball. That is a true like clash of cultures within a very
Yeah.
short period of a very short distance. There's no way any Kentucky fan is like, oh, I was kind of hoping Louisville would make it past Creighton in the first round. Nope. We were
No.
happy to see
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure you were. I mean, at the same token, I know people that every time Kentucky loses in the tournament, they call it Kentucky Choke Day, KCD, every year. It's how it goes. That's what makes it great. I do think the one thing that the rivalry needs, obviously, the biggest thing has been Louisville needs to, be better, which they were better last year. They're going to be really, really good this year. That's going to bring a lot of that heat and intensity back that just quite frankly wasn't there during the Kenny Payne era because of how atrocious they were. But
We started to count those as auto wins, and that should never, ever happen.
right. Right. Like I know Kentucky's had their fair deal of success in the rivalry, even when Louisville's been really good. But that's never been a game you just look at and say, "Oh yeah, no, you're gonna win, whatever." Like that's not how it goes. It's a clash of titans every time these two teams take the basketball court, and it's the buildup that goes throughout the season leading up to that moment. That's incredible, which is why part of the reason why it sucks that they're playing the game on November 11th this year. I hate that they're playing it that early.
It's not right. Like it, look. let's say that we have Jaden Quayton's back and that he's going to be fully healthy. Let's just say, let's say every team is full strength.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's just that like this game has a very mid to late December-y feel and has like always.
I'll take it a step farther than that. I think the thing that has hurt the Louisville Kentucky rivalry more than anything else the last 15, 20 years is the fact, you know why Duke Carolina is viewed as so much bigger? It's because they play the games in conference season in February after football, where people are actually paying attention to college basketball. You know, when they play the Louisville Kentucky game, traditionally taking this year out of it, last year, I thought they did actually a pretty good job because they played it that Saturday in between college football championship, conference championships, and the playoffs starting. But traditionally, they play that game in late December, going up against either major college football bowl games, the college football playoff, or late regular season NFL. How do you bury something great? You put it up against the college football playoff or late season NFL. And while that intensity will always be there within the state, the thing that's kept this rivalry from going to the next level is the fact that it's not going to get it just doesn't get the eyes on it deserves nationally because they're playing it at times when football is dominant. The one good thing about them playing this game on November 11th this year is that it's a Tuesday night. There's no major college football. There's no NFL. So you're going to get a lot of eyes on that. However, it's still November college basketball. That's just not going to draw the same. That's why, especially now when you look at the fact that Louisville's playing Baylor on Valentine's Day this year, the ACC has gone from 20 games down to 18 games. Kentucky, the last few years, has shown a willingness to play Gonzaga in January and February. If you're willing to play those games, big time non conference games late in the year, which that's not just a Louisville Kentucky thing. We saw Duke play Illinois last year. I know they're playing someone else out of the Big Ten. I'm blanking on who they're playing this year in Madison Square Garden. The Big 12 SEC Challenge for a number of years was in late January. If you're willing to play more non-conference games, big time non-conference games late in the season, which I would argue is good for the sport, that would make it easier to shift through which conferences have the best teams and help metrics and all that stuff as well. There's absolutely no reason why you can't take Louisville and Kentucky and bookmark it into either the week between AFC, NFC conference championship weeks in the Super Bowl or sometime in February after the Super Bowl to where ESPN can put that full propaganda machine behind it the same way they do Duke Carolina. Not to mention the fact that both teams would be playing their best basketball of the season and compared to when you play that game in November. He said Jaden Quayton's probably isn't going to be healthy. Kason Pryor still coming back from a knee injury on Louisville's end as well. You look at all the Cal Patino era games. The reason I think a lot of those games weren't very well played is because, let's face it, Cal's teams, the whole thing was you have enough runway to get to the end because they're going to peak right at the end of the season with all the freshmen and all that stuff. Patino, the whole mantra was, well, they're going to peak in February. That's where they're going to be playing their best ball. So why not play that game with those two Titans when the eyes are on college basketball and you're playing your best basketball? It just makes too much sense to me that they haven't done it. And I hope moving forward, that's what we see with more of a willingness for both schools and nationally to play those types of games later in the year.
I mean, it's such a machine.
Sorry for a rant there.
It's such a machine that goes behind it, but like there's also this race now right now where like in college basketball for a top tier program like Kentucky or Louisville, you're looking to make your non-conference absolutely ridiculous. And you see that in Kentucky's non-conference schedule, which I'm very familiar with at this point. There's just a lot of games that normally you'd see 50% of those in a non-conference schedule, and you'd still consider it kind of a crazy one. This time, I mean, we're going to play Purdue and Georgetown in exhibition games, and that's Georgetown from DC, folks. That's not Georgetown from Georgetown, Kentucky.
Yeah, we're used to that being Georgetown College.
Yeah, yeah. And so Jack, like right now, as far as Louisville's basketball roster goes, what do you, because these are two teams that no matter what way you cut it, no matter what database or account or personality is talking, these are two teams that are starting the year considered to be top 15 teams, and that's minimum. A lot of them top 5, top 10. What are going to be the biggest X factors on Louisville's roster for how this season's going to turn out?
I think a lot of it is figuring out what you're going to do in the front court because I honestly do think Louisville might have the best backcourt in college basketball. Michael Brown, Ryan Conwell, Isaac McNeely, Adrian Woolley, Javon Hadley, if you want to throw him in there as well. He's kind of going to be a hybrid Swiss Army knife type piece. They're going to be phenomenal on that in the backcourt. It's going to be an absolute blast to watch all year. But between Ali Khalifa, Frew, Hadley, Kason Pryor, Connie Ruths. How does Pat Kelsey figure out that front court? Who's going to be getting minutes? Who's going to be the guys that step up on that? Because they have a lot of pieces and they're going to play a lot of dudes. They're going to play 10, 11, 12 guys. That's what Pat Kelsey wants to do. His team last year at Louisville, it was 91st in adjusted tempo. That's the slowest tempo Pat Kelsey's played in over a decade. And that's purely because they had, the injury to Pryor, Corin Johnson got hurt. Traore was out for a good bit of time. They were limited to a 7-8 man rotation. That's not how Pat Kelsey wants to play. They're going to play a lot of dudes. They're going to get up and down. It's going to be fantastic to watch. It's can you figure out who is going to step up within a group of very talented but guys that have question marks for one reason or another in that front court. If you can do that, then the sky's the limit for this team. You can be. I really do feel like Houston and Purdue is a true 1-2, 2-1, 1A, 1B, whatever you want to do it. I think they're the two best teams in the country. But beyond that, Louisville and Kentucky, they're right in that mix of third, fourth, fifth, sixth best teams in college basketball. It's going to be incredibly fun to watch that Louisville team. You brought up Kentucky's non-conference schedule. The same night they're playing Purdue in Lexington. Think about this, October 24th. We're getting Kentucky, Purdue, and Lexington, and Louisville, Kansas in the Yum Center. as a pair of exhibitions in October. Like, that's insane. Now, I wish these games actually counted for the record. I find it kind of ridiculous that they don't. I kind of a mixed bag of how I feel about them because they don't actually count. But at the end of the day, you're telling me we're getting those four teams to play on a Friday night in October? Hell yeah, let's sign up for that any day of the week.
I guess look, if it leads to teams being more prepared once the regular season starts, then great. It's just confusing. Like, if Kentucky drops, an exhibition game to Purdue 80-72, I don't know how to feel about that. It's not a
Yeah.
loss. At the same time, I don't ever like to see Kentucky come up on the wrong side of a scoreboard. But
Right, but if Kentucky were to beat Purdue in that exhibition, that you and the SEC is going to be a gauntlet again. It's going to be really, really fun to watch. But you can make an argument that that's better than any win they could have the rest of the season. And you're telling me we're not going to be able to put that on the resume because Mark Pope and Matt Painter, who have both done an incredible job doing their non-conference scheduling, but because they weren't man enough to put it on the actual schedule, that's not going to count for either one of those guys, whoever wins that game. That's frustrating. It is.
yeah, so it's kind of like it's like at the end of my first semester, my first year of law school, when we were going, COVID had just happened, and we were going to pass fail for every class. And it's like, sure, this can't go horribly for anybody, but like the rewards of this going well is very low. Still.
Right.
Like, so it's very dissatisfying. Um, Now I will say, like, Pryor, when it comes to Louisville, that's always been a guy I've looked at as someone I could hate a lot. Like,
Yeah, he's one of those dudes. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's on your team, you hate him. Type of deal. Absolutely.
Any Louisville player over the years that has bleached his hair, like, is automatic, like, much hateable level.
Hey, Willie Cauley signs the same way, man. It goes both ways.
I do like Khalifa. I always have.
I have to.
And so it's going to suck for me wanting that guy to not do well, at least for, 140-minute period of basketball. But, for a team that's going to have a very talented backcourt, that is someone in the front court that you see as having a lot of potential roles.
I mean, Louisville could roll a lineup out with Michael Brown, Conwell, McNeely, Javon Hadley, and Ali Khalifa. And you can look at those five dudes and go, well, all these five guys can shoot the ball, pass the ball, and facilitate offense. How the hell do you defend that as an opposing team? You just can't take everything away on that. And you're either going to be left making a choice because Louisville can go 5 out. They can have cutting. They have all the movement that Pat Kelsey loves to have. You're playing with all this pace, and you're like, okay, are we going to help on a drive and give up an open three, or are we going to let guys go 1-on-1 and give up layups? Either way, you're losing with the quality of shooting, the quality of passing, and just the quality of player that's on the floor there. It's going to be phenomenal to watch.
And now to flip the script to Kentucky. Now, as a Kentucky fan, the thing I'm actually looking for the most this year that I think is going to be the most important is what the guys who are returning from last year are going to be able to do. Because Colin Chandler has been identified by a lot of different people as like the X factor for this team. And I think that some of that might be a little overblown just because once you get identified as an X factor or a sleeping, like, like once you get identified as like a diamond in the rough, it's like how Paul Millsap was considered the most underrated player in the NBA for like 20 years, past the point where he was like an all-star. And it's like, I don't think he's underrated anymore, guys. I think
Yeah, like he's just good.
and so there's what Colin Chandler, what Brandon Garrison will be able to do, what Trent Noah will be able to do over in this year where they're coming back, and what Otega Owe will be able to expand upon from what he did last year, because we had to spend about north of $2 million to bring Otega Owe back, and it's these kinds of situations that I do have to say, like, it's not that they make me nervous, but I certainly do have my reservations. And I see, we've seen so many times where guys come back. There's so much time. We've seen it outside of the NIL era. Take Jared Solinger, for example, where you're saying, oh my God, imagine what happens if this guy comes back. It can only get better. But then sometimes it doesn't,
to,
sometimes.
to be fair, they did make a Final Four his second year.
Sure. Sure. Now, personal draft stock suffered, and part of that, I think,
Right. But
I
I assume you're talking about this through the lens of team success, right?
sure. Now, like, I do think that in that period of time, Ohio State just got better, outside.
Yeah.
And I don't know when it comes to this Kentucky team, it's hard to say. I think, like, obviously, there's all the reason in the world for us to be very excited about this Kentucky team. The pieces that we brought in, where at first it didn't necessarily seem like big TMZ moves, and it wasn't. It seemed like we missed out on a lot of the people that were like the top targets in the portal. The more time that goes by, though, with Mo Diabate, with Cam Williams, you look at those guys and it's like, damn, man, like that, you could really see those guys being like the pieces on like a fantastic run for Kentucky. And then we finally get a guy, Jack from Europe, who's actually able to play. Look at that. They cleared him. He's going to be able
They don't have to hang the billboards this year.
nice, man. For what Gonzaga has been able to do effortlessly for 2 decades, bring in players from Europe, get them on the court. Kentucky's had a terrible string of luck. And finally, we're going to have a guy from Europe that is going to be able to get on the court, and there's not going to have to be any free Enos shirts, nothing like that. He's going to be able to play.
For Big Z for
The
billboards
billboard,
killed me.
that paperwork was just sitting on some clown's desk in some office somewhere.
But I mean, I think we saw a very calculated effort from Mark Pope for how he attacked the portal. When you look at Mo Diabate, you look at Jaden Quaidens, Jalen Lowe as well, of looking at where were your shortcomings last year. It was on the defensive end, and it was not being able to athletically compete with teams on that end of the floor. When you look at Florida hanging 110, 105 points on you, whatever it was, Alabama hanging 90, 95 on you, Auburn, all these teams, look at where Kentucky faltered last year because they had a really good year. They were a 4 seed, made the Sweet 16, all that stuff. But what kept them from being a truly elite team was they just did not have the bodies on that end of the floor to be able to compete defensively night in, night out against the elite offenses you were facing in the SEC. And Mark Pope saw that and said, I am not repeating that again. I'm getting Mo Diabate, who's an athletic freak, Jalen Lowe, who's an absolute hound of a point guard. Bringing back Otega Owe, the one dude other than Lamont Butler as well, but the injuries really slowed him down and really took that away from him the last couple months of the year. But Otega Owe being the dude that was like, okay, that's an SEC caliber body that we can throw out there. There, Denzel Averdeen bringing him over from Florida as well. It's a very concerted effort of we're going to be incredibly athletic this year. We're not going to struggle on that defensive end of the floor because we can't physically compete with these teams. And that was a very calculated and smart move for Mark Pope. Now, this is a team that I don't think is going to be as good of a shooting team as we saw last year because very rarely can you do everything, but Cam Williams, that's where he comes in. He's an absolute stud of a shooter. Can Conlon Chandler take that next step and be a really good shooter? Aberdeen's a dude that shot 35% last year. He's still going to have shooting, but I'm not sure it's going to be the same type of three-point shooting caliber team that we saw a year ago from Kentucky, but I think it might end up being a net positive for them anyways because you can hang in games defensively a little bit better than you did a year ago.
And Noah, has more emerged in the time from last year as like, all right, this guy can go on the floor, grab 4 to 5 rebounds, and hit a few threes. It was what we like, our expectations kind of flip flop between Travis Perry and Noah from last year, where we thought it was going to be Perry, who was the guy who, could be kind of a microwave scorer. And that just didn't work out as well. But Noah is a dog. And like I love the Aberdeen get too, and especially it was such a slap in the face to Florida to be at the White House and Donald Trump was like, and what about you? Y'all played for Florida, and Aberdeen's like, I play for Kentucky now. Oh my God.
That's college sports in a nutshell.
Right.
These
but,
days.
but I think that what I want to see too, especially like you've got Malachi Moreno, that's that deep on that team. Jasper Johnson is that deep on that team.
I'm
And
intrigued because there's been a lot. Sorry to cut you off, but there's been a lot of talk about Louisville and then how are they going to play all these guys. I'm honestly more intrigued and interested to see how Mark Pope handles this because they have legit 12, 13 dudes. And how are you going to feed all those mouths? It is going to be incredibly interesting to me.
I think how you feed those mouths is you play them. I think that like, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, Jack, is I've seen way too many times over the last decade that like 7-man rotation space that Calipari was in. And it like we've talked about it multiple times where it's like, dude, I don't care what you have to say about some of these people, about what their downfalls are. Things aren't working out there. Like we're losing by 15 in a game that we on paper should be winning. Something's not working. Try something different. So the way with Mark Pope and especially with the team where you're talking about where if this team is if you're going to have to find your shooting maybe in some different spots in different games, it's going to be working in some places and not working in others, then you have to be going with double-digit guys. And especially in this portal era where everybody else is going to have depth too. To utilize some of the thing, like for our defense and our athleticism to show through the best, sometimes those guys need to, like be coming in rotations. The thing is, Kentucky has this weird thing with their rotation system where we forget that it worked really, really well for a year.
What why are they bringing that back the platoons?
Dude, like the thing is, you don't have to call it this, but the idea that like we ever got away from using the depth that you have on a team is crazy. The fact that we let that get in our head that was a bad thing.
Well, I think 2014-15 when you're looking at the Cal era, that was such an exception to how he wanted to operate. I don't think it was purely oh my God, the platoons, why we lost. I'm never doing that again.
No,
I thought that team, even going into the year, that was more of an exception to, hey, we got more guys back than we honestly thought we were going to. So now we have all these guys. You look at, the Anthony Davis title team, they only played 7-8 dudes. The John Wall team, they only played 7-8 dudes. The Brandon Knight team that made the Final Four with Josh Harrelson at center. They only played 7-8 dudes. Tyler Ulis and those guys, they only played 7-8 dudes. Fox, Monk, Bam. That's kind of just, I'm not arguing that one way is better than the other. I'm just trying to make the point that that's how Calipari was. Rick Pitino, for instance, was very different. He usually played 9-10 guys and had wild amounts of success doing it. I think there's a lot of different ways to be successful. Is kind of the point I'm trying to make. I don't think it has to be a one or the other type thing.
Yeah, but you do what you have the resources to do.
Right.
If it comes to if Ryan Harrow and Kyle Wilcher are your 8 and 9 guys off the bench, that's what you deal with. But on this Kentucky team, where we're talking about Brandon Garrison, we're talking about Malachi Moreno, Jasper Johnson, Noah, Colin Chandler. There's a ton of options if things aren't going how you want out on the floor. And especially if a team like Louisville is going to be, using their depth to their advantage, we need to be doing that too. And I think that this is a year where we're going to want to. I think Mark Pope speaks highly of double-digit guys on the team. I think that there's been an extraordinary amount of, microscopic focus on every single player on Kentucky's roster since the season ended. Once the whole battle for whether we knew Otega Owe was coming back or not, that's not even a discussion anymore. Like Otega Owe, he'll have some games that are off because sometimes he has to take more shots from
I'm honestly not sure. I mean, he had that stretch the last 2 months of the season where what was it? I think it might have been the whole season. Wasn't he in double figures, something like 34 to 36 games, something crazy like that?
yeah,
That he became like the consistent rock of that team last season.
Yeah, and on paper, sure, some games were much more of a struggle for him than others. And so it led to much less efficient performances. Like Owe absolutely needed to put us on his back some games last season. I don't think,
Especially the last 6 weeks or so of the season.
yeah, like anytime we played Oklahoma,
He liked that revenge game, man.
but I'll tell you, I ended up so I screamed at my wife during the second Oklahoma game because we had just blown that massive lead in the SEC tournament.
Yep.
And I brought my computer. I was watching it while I was working, and then I brought it back out for the last few minutes. And I'm sitting here watching it in the living room, and she was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Just stop it!" I was like, we're blowing. I was like, "We're about to blow the biggest lead I've ever seen. Like, I have never seen a team absolutely collapse like this under this pressure underneath the basket. We just keep giving them the ball. They're scoring at will." And then Otega Owe drives down the court coast to coast, lays it in with his left hand on the right side. I was like, I don't even know what to describe what I just saw. That's when you knew that guy was magic. Those are the
Yeah.
things that, like, that guy does that end up in UK highlight videos that we show before games for 20 something years.
Yeah, playing the Bittersweet Symphony remix.
Oh yeah, dude. I love that remix.
It's a damn good remix. It's because I remember back when I was in Louisville, I covered Kentucky basketball games. It was the Oscar Sheboy Player of the Year, St. Peter's year. Sorry to bring up the bad memory at the end, but like you said, they're playing the videos like, yeah, that's Kentucky basketball. That makes sense. That they're probably the greatest, program in the history of the sport. They should play a 2-minute video highlighting everything they've done the last 80 years.
We've got so many. They give me goosebumps, every single one of them. And, Jack, like, the thing is, when we're talking about, like, there's a lot of great programs in the history of college basketball, and not a lot of them get credit, like, because people aren't that big into history ever. Like,
Right.
It's not something that, like, I can't explain to a lot of people, like, yo, the thing is, like, you should put respect on UC basketball and West Virginia basketball too. Like, like, those are programs with very long and proud histories.
Right.
There's a lot of great programs in college basketball, and Louisville absolutely being one of them. And like, the line between what a blue blood is in this day and age is very blurred. I think we could probably do an entire episode, 3 hours.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
About what blue blood is. How many are there? Are there 3 blue bloods? Are there 10? Are there 25?
I have it at 5 right now.
All right, who are your blue bloods?
Kentucky, Carolina, Kansas, Duke, and newly entered UConn.
Yeah, I would say that is the fairest number that you can give.
Yep.
And UConn deserves to be in there for what they've done since 1999, for sure.
Yeah.
There-
UConn's the biggest question mark because before 99 they were nothing. But when you win back-to-back titles and you're the best program in the country in the most recent 25 years, I'll slide you in as that 5th one.
And really, Kansas is the one that I think is. I honestly might say that Kansas is the one teetering the most on that blue blood. Here's
I
the
disagree.
look, dude. Look how many championships they've actually won, like in an extended period of time. Like you go to Duke and Carolina since the '90s. You go to Kentucky since the '90s. Kansas has actually a shockingly few amount of national
Well, they
championships.
have four,
I
which
know.
is one less than Duke and Connecticut, and they've been prevalent much longer. You think about the roots of the game of basketball and Fog Allen and pioneering that and all that
I,
stuff.
yeah, there's
I,
look, the
yeah,
historical aspect is what gets Kansas in. Now, four titles doesn't sound like a lot to me. We had that many in 1958. So,
fair. Well, no, but that's why I have them like that's why I ordered it in a very specific way. Like
how
I had Kentucky, Carolina, Kansas, Duke, UConn,
how
in
far
that order.
how far outside do you think Indiana would be based on that criteria?
If it was 1995, Indiana would be a blue blood, but yes, the history matters. Yes, yes, you have to look at the grand scope of things, but at one point or another, if you're looking at blue bloods, you do have to be nationally relevant right now, and that's why I don't have UCLA or IU in there. I think UCLA is its own special case because they have the greatest run in the history of college basketball that will never be matched with John Wooden, but at the end of the day, they have won title since 1975.
Yeah,
For me, at some point that becomes that was John Wooden was incredible, not UCLA basketball is incredible. And IU, yes, they won two titles in with Branch McCracken as well and Bob Knight, but at some point you haven't won a title since '87. Yet you haven't been to the Final Four since '02. You've made it past the Sweet 16 once since 1993.
uh,
Like you have to show something. Now, if IU were to win a title this year, Darren DeVries, I'd probably put them back into that group. But until they do that and prove that they're a factor in today's day of age, they're not a blue blood. So I think UCLA is its own tier, so they're sixth. And then 7 through 10, I would put it in some order. They're so incredibly close of Indiana, Louisville, Villanova. I think of the next three, and then Michigan State would be my 10th. Um, but you could take those three of Louisville, IU, and Villanova and argue them in any order, and I think you have a legit point. To be completely honest, they're all very close together. Those three schools.
I feel like you could sit here and rattle off like 30 schools that are in the conversation for that next, like that two to be tier. Like that's like,
Right.
you know,
I do think after 9, it becomes way more wide open because that's where, I have Michigan State there because they do have the two titles. They have all the Final Fours of Izzo, but you could throw in the Syracuses, the Georgetowns,
where's
the,
Arizona?
yep, Arizona.
Where's Butler in that conversation?
Probably
Even
haven't won a title. They're
okay,
farther down.
okay, but like still, we're talking like, but still, even teams haven't done anything close to as impressive as Butler making two straight championship games. Like,
Right, but I'm not going to put them over Syracuse, who was such a force for decades with Jim Boeheim and did cut down the nets at the end.
all right, they had a championship in 2003. I will forever say that Jim Boeheim's run at Syracuse is one of the most overrated coaching runs.
I
Like,
agree. He should have won more.
I mean, to have
Yeah.
one championship in 40 years
Yeah.
coaching is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
Georgetown, Houston. There's so many schools that have had these periods of success.
The fact that Houston, I would argue, is the best school that hasn't won one.
Yeah, and especially over multiple periods of time where they were like one seed level teams.
Right. Like they had the Elvin Hayes era. They had Phi Slamma Jamma. They've had this run they're having now. How they haven't figured out to win one in any of that? I mean, they might cut it down this year. Purdue's in that conversation as well as best program to not win a title. To the chances are one of those teams could end it this season. But to tie it all back, though, I think what separates the Blue Bloods and even within the Blue Bloods, I think you look at Kentucky and Carolina, the difference of those two schools from even the other Blue Bloods is the fact that you've seen so many different coaches in both of those programs win. I mean, you look at Kentucky, like off the top of my head, Rupp's won titles, Joby Hall won a title, Patino won a title, Tubby won a title, Cal won a title. How many other schools do you say 5 different head coaches won a title?
Now,
None.
now
That's honestly the biggest difference between them and which Carolina. Al McGuire won a title. Dean Smith won two titles. And Roy Williams won three. The the being able to go through different coaching regimes and still being so elite, I think is what separates those two schools from everyone else.
and it's such a vast difference when you look at those schools and UCLA. Like
Yeah.
the real difference in what a blue blood is like, look, Kentucky has never gone more than 20 years without winning a national championship. And you get those numbers way crazier when you start saying how long has it been since a Final Four? Like
Yeah.
you can even say, I mean, Kentucky's won one title over, what is
Since
now
'98, they've won one title.
it's 98, but between 1996 and 1998, we were very close to three-peating.
Yeah.
Between 2011 and 2015, we went to 4 out of 5 Final Fours. What
Yep.
you're seeing now is the period of time that has always happened in Kentucky basketball is the calm before the storm. Like there's always been this period of time. Like even Tubby Smith was never able to make it to a Final Four past 1998, but was able to, get to a couple of Elite Eights with very good teams and like was close. So what the difference with Kentucky, with Carolina, with Duke is that like you're just hoping to hold them off for a certain period of time without gaining too much more ground on you. And
Duke, I think, is a little different because they had only been to two Final Fours and hadn't won a title before Coach K. Now, Shire looks like he's primed to win a title, if not multiple titles. So that's where I still firmly have Duke as a blue blood at the moment. But if it slowly deteriorates from that, which again, I don't expect it to. I think Shire's a damn good coach and they had the best team last year and very well could have won it. And they're going to have a top 5, 10-ish team again this year. Recruiting's going nuts. They have all the talent in the world, all the backing and all that stuff. But they do have to prove that they can win the big one without Coach K. That is a thing that the longer it goes, that will be more of a talking point. Again, I do expect Shire to eventually get one. I don't know if it's going to be this year, next year, whenever. This teams have just been too good so far to say that he's not going to. But it's still something that if you end up going 6, 7, 8 years and they haven't won one, if they don't get back to the Final Four after last year, then you can start asking that question.
now, Jack, I have to pee super bad, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer this question while I do that. Where do you put Florida on the list?
Florida is incredibly tough, man. Honestly, you could argue that they should be 10th instead of Michigan State because they had the back-to-back titles, which only Duke, UConn, and UCLA have done, and San Francisco have done before. Um, but there's nothing before Billy Donovan. So I think you could put them again, maybe in that 10 spot, if not 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. But the fact they have three titles, the fact that they've gone back to back, makes it incredibly it makes him a very tough one to judge and be able to look at that type of thing because do you put them ahead of Michigan State, who's been a better program for longer, but they don't have as many titles, they haven't gone back to back. Those are very interesting and tough questions to ask when you're trying to power rank this. It becomes a lot muddier. Like I was saying, I think the blue bloods are pretty, you can break that down. UCLA's own tier, the three schools after that. Basically, I'm debating if I should put Florida 10th instead of Michigan State. Is the question because I think they've been the better program in the 21st century. They have the back-to-back titles, which only UConn, Duke, UCLA, and San Francisco have done before. But at the end of the day, they were nothing before Billy Donovan. So that's the tough back and forth with Florida.
Well, I know Florida made the Final Four in 2000. Did they make the Final Four in 1992 or 1993?
They did. They had a miracle run.
Was Dwayne Chinch still at Florida at the time?
He might have been. He might have been.
Um,
I don't think it was 92. It might have been 93.
and so, Florida, yeah, it is hard to judge because you got like one period of 2 years of back-to-back titles, which is just like one of the greatest college basketball teams that's ever been assembled.
Right.
And so how to judge now? It's way easier to justify when you're fresh off a title right now. A whole different set of people, a whole different coach.
Right.
Really do
And that's a big proving point that the fact that they were able to get back to the top of the mountain with Todd Golden. Like that is important and impressive, and one of the things you have to prove that you can do.
And now I'm looking for a school, like someone else to enter themselves in this conversation. And it could be UC, it could be West Virginia or Ohio State, someone to get back to the top of schools that, like, had great runs of NBA All-Stars from 1963. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't mean
If Ohio State could have cashed in on one of those Sullinger Aaron Craft runs in the early 2010s, I think you'd be looking at them much differently than what we do. Whereas now they're probably a top 15-ish program all time. But they would have added a third title, then maybe you throw them kind of into that Louisville, Villanova, Indiana group. But two titles, and it's been 50 years. John Havlicek's not walking through that door. Oscar Robinson's not walking through that door at Cincinnati. I mean, how different do we view Cincinnati if they cash in '92 and win it all? Now they were probably the third or fourth best team in that Final Four with Duke and Leitner there, one of the all-time great
if
teams, the Fab Five,
Kenyon
and
Martin doesn't
Indiana
break his
with Calbert
fall.
Cheney. What was that?
If Kenyon Martin doesn't
Now
break
that's where I was getting to next. What if Kenyon Martin doesn't, get hurt and they cash in that year? How do we view Cincinnati? Probably very differently than what we do right now. But Cincinnati again, Wes Miller, that tenure hasn't gone as good as most people, including myself, thought it would have so far. It's kind of a push comes to shove. They got to prove something this year. They got to get off the mat, get something going, or else they could be looking for another coach.
UC does bother me. They should have had a lot more team success at this point over the last 20 years. And, we could do a whole 3-hour podcast on my feelings on Mick Cronin. But, we don't have the time for that.
Yeah. He doesn't like traveling east for all the basketball games. Going back to our
Is
earlier
he like
topic.
anything? Is there anything that guy can't blame for his
He
losses?
likes the ponies. I know
It,
that.
I know that if you're a player who plays for Mick Cronin, I'd protect your neck after a game because that guy's throwing strays at everybody besides himself.
He's won a lot of basketball games, man.
Dude, good coach, good coach. He's a finger pointer, always has been. Remember, he tried to take Jerron Cumberland out of a game where Jerron Cumberland had 4 fouls, and Jerron Cumberland said, "No, I'm not coming out." Mick Cronin said, "Okay." Next play, Jerron Cumberland fouls out. Mick Cronin's like, what are you doing?" And it's like, "What are you doing, bro?" Like, I thought that you saying that should have mattered. This is a guy, that's a guy that's always been able to acquire good talent, and I think is a good X's and O's coach. At the end of the day, there's something missing from that guy's entire package, and why it hasn't ever been able to been strung together for greater success.
I mean, I think he's good, not great. Which I think is why Louisville fans didn't want him. It felt like there was kind of a ceiling there. He did have the Final Four run in 2021 as an 11 seed with Jaime Jaquez, Johnny Juzang, and those guys. And he had some really good years there right after that, to where they're good. They could be a 2-3 seed. I mean, Cincinnati, he had a bunch of good years there as well in the Big East and early American Athletic Conference years, to where obviously that got him the UCLA job. So like, he's a good coach. I don't know. I don't know if he can win a national title, but I think which is an issue eventually at some point at UCLA.
LA.
But I thought for Cincinnati, he was a really good fit. He fit kind of the culture there too, of kind of tough, rugged, defensive oriented. I really did think he was a really good fit there. That's why he won a lot of basketball games when he was there.
Yeah, yeah. Mick Cronin at UCLA. That's a weird fit too because
It's always felt like a weird fit.
Mick Cronin is not Hollywood by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that unfortunately it's weird to talk like this about a guy that has been as good a coach as Mick Cronin and a school that hasn't won a champion, has won one championship now 20 years ago. And it was their first, their only since
That
1975.
was 30 years ago at this point.
Oh my God, that's how long ago 1995.
We're old, man.
Right. Uh, so it's weird to say this part about him, but it's like UCLA was fine with that and is going to be fine with that, but there is a peak to what he can achieve, I think. But I don't know how much UCLA cares is the thing. I think like if you take him to a Final Four every once in a while in this era, I think UCLA is happy with that. And that's a shame.
Well, then you're answering the question of if they're a blue blood or not.
I don't think so. I think based on the answer to this question, I think you have to say no.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Mick Cronin can stay there going to a Final Four once every decade. And that's even a heavy expectation. But no, I think if you're happy with that as a fan base and as a school, no, I don't think you can be.
Right. I mean, that's what separates the Louisvilles and the Kentuckys and the blue blood schools. They expect to win titles, and they expect them to win fairly often at an unrealistic rate, even, I would argue. But that's what makes it fun. Even, in Indiana, they fired Tom Crean when he had made 3 second weekends in 5 years and won 2 Big Ten titles in the previous 4 seasons. And they've been chasing to even get back to that point since then, but that's a whole other discussion.
That started to look pretty good in Bloomington after a little bit of time goes by.
Yeah.
But, folks, it's been another very fun conversation here with Jack Grossman. Jack, thank you again for coming back on the show. Always fun. Can't wait to talk to you as the college basketball season gets rolling around. If there's anything you want to say or anybody you want to shout out, the floor is yours.
I always appreciate coming on, Brady. Had a blast, man. Follow me on Twitter, shameless plug at Jack Grossman 97. Gonna be talking Louisville basketball all year long on Floyd Street's Finest with Mark Lieberman, former Louisville assistant, part of the Field 68 podcast network. There you can find that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you consume that type of stuff. Gonna be having a blast with that this year, following what will be an incredibly fun Louisville basketball season and getting ready for that big game on November 11th as well with the Wildcats.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Follow me on Twitter at Roto Brady for all things combat sports, and peace.